On Thursday, June 4th, I participated in the CEC webinar on changes to special education policy, what every educator needs to know. Overall, I felt that the webinar was well done. The presenter was interesting. You could tell she was a person just like us. When the slides were not cooperating with her, she took it in stride, did the best she could, and made light of it. It made her more relatable, which always holds my interest more. I appreciated the acknowledgement of how people making the policies are often not those in the classrooms. The cartoon depicting Washington, D.C. in one direction and the real world in another direction gave me a chuckle. With all the testing at this time of year, combined with getting everything all set for teacher evaluation ratings, I'd be lying if I didn't say the same thought crossed my mind regularly. It's nice to know I'm not alone. The interactive feature of the webinar was my favorite part. The fact that we were able to key in answers and see what percentage of the listeners believed or thought about for various things was extremely interesting. The use of the two videos broke up the webinar nicely, provided a nice comic relief in the midst of the heavy policy and politics talk. Watching the video of the two twins talking made me think of my own toddler, watching her interact with her cousins, the kids she meets while she's out. I have no idea what they're saying to each other, but they seem to understand. To me, it was a great reminder that there's so much more going on in a child's head than we can often see or even begin to comprehend. The last video of the kid president was cute. We watched it during one of our staff and faculty meetings, either in the beginning of the year or the middle of the year, I can't remember, but it's always good to watch an inspirational pep talk. Some changes in education policy include ESEA reauthorization, college and career-ready standard assessments, new teacher evaluation systems, new early learning initiatives, new education research policy, new higher education proposals, and some funding changes. Some key special and gifted education policy issues that are currently under consideration by the Obama administration and U.S. Congress are the ESRA, the Education Sciences Reform Act, the Higher Education Act, the ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is also known as No Child Left Behind, and IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The ESEA and IDEA are overdue for reauthorization. The reauthorization of ESEA has been stalled because the House and the Senate have totally opposite views. I was amazed, or rather shocked, to see that with the adequate yearly progress put in place through ESEA, that 82% of the schools were not meeting their AYP goals. This number really surprised me. ESEA had waivers that removed the 2014 AYP deadlines, added funding flexibility, added changes to accountability, and added flexibility for the highly qualified teachers plans. The conditions of receiving these waivers were that college and career readiness standards had to be adopted, assessments that measure student growth had to be developed, a differentiated accountability system had to be developed, and guidelines for local teacher and principal evaluations that are based on effectiveness had to be developed. I think every teacher in New York is well aware of the effects of these waivers. I know I'm moving my way through the transition curve that they mentioned in the webinar. Sometimes I still struggle with acceptance and moving forward. Every time I think I get there, some more changes come rolling in, but I guess that's life. When talking about the assessments, one of the interactive surveys was on the new technology needed to implement the assessments, and it asked if the districts had the technology they needed in order to implement the new assessments. It was 50-50. Half of the districts of the participants didn't have adequate technology to implement the assessments properly. That's crazy. All I could think about when I saw that was all of the talk about the achievement gap that we need to fill with highly qualified teachers. And I guess I don't understand how highly qualified teachers are going to fill this perceived gap without the resources and materials that they need to achieve it. But I digress. The CEC has recommendations and positions on key policy issues. The CEC opposed the Student Success Act, H.R. 5, which was the House version of ESEA. Provisions in the Student Success Act that the CEC supports are that it eliminates AYP, maintains disaggregation of subgroup data, improves data transparency, assures parents understand the implications of alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards, including that students are not precluded from attempting to complete requirements for a regular diploma, a 95% student participation rate for all students, and UDL. The serious concerns the CEC had with the Student Success Act were that it reduces accountability for students with disabilities, removes the 1% gap on alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards, lacks focus on professional development, includes performance pay that is solely based from standardized test scores, increases privatization, ignores high ability students, eliminates MOE, permits Title I portability provisions, and ignores early childhood education. The Every Child Achieves Act is the Senate version of ESEA, and the provisions that CEC supports are that the Act eliminated AYP, maintains disaggregation of subgroup data, supports early intervening services in general ed, UDL, and PBIS, maintains the 1% cap on alternate assessments based on alternate achievement standards, prohibits modified standards and assessments, maintains the Javits Gifted and Talented Act, supports early childhood programs, maintains MOE, prohibits Title I portability provisions, and allows but does not require new teacher evaluation systems. Concerns the CEC has with the Every Child Achieves Act is that it has new requirements without adequate resources, reduces accountability for students with disabilities, lacks focus on professional development, increases privatization, and removes the HQT, the highly qualified teacher plans. The budget portion of the webinar was fascinating. I had no idea we only spent 2% on education. Personally, I think that's embarrassing. I realize that there are things we absolutely need to spend money on, but education should still be one of them. 2% doesn't really seem like a lot to me. It doesn't seem like much at all, actually, in the grand scheme of things. The future budget of education was not really looking promising, though I was excited to see the increases for the 2015 budget, especially in Javits. Gifted education doesn't often receive the recognition and the acknowledgement that it deserves. And this is where the Talent Act comes in. The CEC supports the Talent Act. I appreciated the CEC's focus on early childhood inclusion. Early childhood education is extremely important. Their focus on all children having access to and full participation in high-quality early care and education settings is really wonderful. I feel that's a step in the right direction. Early intervention is really key to setting children up for their best success, not only in academics, but in life. The CEC has recommendations for the Education Sciences Reform Act as well. These recommendations include strengthening the National Center for Special Education Research, bridging the research to practice gap, recognizing special and gifted education and the Institute for Education Sciences, and to support strong, consistent leadership. The Strengthening Education Through Research Act, CEC recommendations, include prioritizing special education research funding within the Institute of Education Sciences, emphasizing the elimination of the achievement gap between students with and without disabilities, increasing dissemination and collaboration with the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, and increasing the pipeline of early career special education researchers, and ensuring peer reviewers have expertise in areas relevant to grant applications. The CEC's concerns relating to this act are that funding levels far too low. So that brings up the budget again. How can we advocate on Capitol Hill? There's numerous ways for us to advocate on Capitol Hill. The first is to participate in the Special Education Legislative Summit, which is on July 12th through the 15th, and it's in Virginia, which if you need more information, it is on the CEC website. This allows teachers, administrators, researchers, parents, or anyone passionate about special education to stand up for children and youth on Capitol Hill. The CEC also recommends that you find your elected officials and urge your senators to co-sponsor the Talent Act. We should support students with exceptionalities, always, in ESEA, tell the Senate to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and tell Congress to invest in programs for children with exceptionalities. The CEC website actually has letters drafted that can be edited to help advocate and have searches for your elected officials on there. I thought that was a really nice touch, especially for someone who doesn't have a lot of time to sit down and write a letter. I know I would be a lot more likely to write a letter if it was mostly drafted for me and I only had to edit it. Life just gets busy, and to have that is really convenient and really awesome of the CEC. I think that's definitely really nice. Overall, I thought the webinar was really well done. So thank you for listening.